if this is something that comes from within, or is this something that I'm being moved to do. And of course, one can really try to do it in a transparent way and influence the network with good governance and effective decision making. So instead of talking with my colleague and telling him it might be a good idea if we get this started, and nudging here and there to get things started, you really transparently communicate with the group and tell them, hey, this is a crucial decision, this is a strategic decision, we might want to look into this or the other thing. And this is what changes a lot in making power with, so this social and shared power within the group, different from what happens a lot in corporations. So I'm not going through all the steps, of course, take time to read it, of course. Here is a nice way of visualizing the power, the empowerment, the power with, all right, and this should help within a DAO to minimize the power over or the coercion, where one member or the other just tells other what to do. While within a DAO, it is really important to talk together, to decide together, to reach a goal together. And also here, the dissent, so when someone does not feel comfortable with something, it's important to try to understand why this is happening, and trying to understand their dissent and why the dissent exists, and instead of minimizing it, try to really figure out new ways to agreement. So within this kind of discussion of power and ownership of organizations, we touched it really briefly yesterday, but we are going to look at it a little bit more. So usually, all right, you have here what is called the voting rights and the economic rights. So who gets to make decisions, and of course, most importantly, who can fire you, and economic rights. So who can claim, who has a claim on company profits. So usually when you have a private company, you have the owner or the family owners, or if you have a bigger corporate, there might be some kind of board or some kind of partners that have both. So they decide what happens and they get most of the money, and you just get your salary and that's it. In a public company, there is might be even worse, in the sense of that the shareholders hold both voting and economic rights, but do none of the work. So sometimes you have company owners, even more so in startups and let's say smaller companies, that does some of the work, if it's only most of the political work, but they do something. And in a public company, well, the shareholders usually take decisions based on financial and economic incentives, or economic interests, and well, the workers are just there to make it possible to make as much money as possible to the shareholders. And this is, of course, one of the less or let's say one of the more interesting formats, because there is a really huge gap here between what the workers want and what the shareholders want, and this leads a lot to conflicts within the two groups. But of course, if they can fire you, well, sometimes there is nothing more you can do but doing your job as good as possible. So now here we have other different type of organization structure. So one is the cooperative, also called co-ops, where the workers do both. They hold voting and economic rights. So um, there was this kind of, let's call it, trend some years ago, where the media started actually talking about these companies that during, I think it was, was it already after 2008 probably, where companies went bankrupt and the workers started taking matters in their own hands and started setting up co-ops and revamping and restarting companies by being also decision makers and of course also here stakeholders. And this is a very interesting format because workers, if you are yourself a shareholder, the intrinsic motivation is much stronger. So it's not just I'm here to pay my bills and do my work, but the better I do my work, the better I take decisions, even more so my economic return will be higher. And so this is a really interesting format to think about, and it is more or less something that goes already more towards what DAOs might be. Then there is this steward ownership, so workers hold the voting rights and investors hold economic rights, but also here you have some workers that hold economic rights, and here we can see this as something like VCs that invest into a company and try and steward it by being not only venture capitalists but also consultants or advisors. So it's a little bit of a mixed model where these investors might have some really strong expertise in specific fields, and so they can support the company, the organization to grow, and of course profit out of it. But they do not hold any kind of voting rights. So they do not really vote or decide anything, but they support and get money out of it. And then of course there is this rather, let's say, complex multi-stakeholder cooperative where things are distributed throughout workers, investors, and customers. And more or less this is where we might see DAOs also growing out of. So it's not only the workers and investors holding rights, but also the customers, so the people using the platforms themselves. And this can happen or we might see them in different DAOs, like for example Bright ID. They offer a Web3 identification KYC system, we might call it, where people let's say give out identities by guaranteeing that that person is that person in such a way. But you as a customer, you might also hold tokens and voting rights. So this have the ability with the DAO tokens to vote upon certain decisions or certain proposals. So this is really interesting format that goes and extends the vision from what we classically know, which might be a private company where there's one owner, he decides everything, and that's it. And of course it broadens the spectrum and it makes things a little bit more complicated, but that's why DAOs learn a lot also from classical corporations and organizational structures, and try to bring the best out of both worlds by experimenting a lot. After that, I don't know if you had time to have a look at this really good article by Patrick here. So this is a collaboration with Tina Hay. And of course they start with some kind of meme stock historic detail here about Isaac Newton that bought a meme stock and it did not really work out as well, and this is some kind of publicity, so with a referral link, so this is not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is further down. So here they start discussing token design. Here Peggy McCormick and Tina Hay start discussing what it means to design token economics and token economies. And this is a really heavy article in the sense of that they go really looking at what it means to design tokens, to design economies, and what are the parallels with protocols and nations. And also here you see, okay, what do they do in DAOs? Well, sometimes they issue and want them to behave like shares in a corporations. Other issue governance rights to skirt regulations and pump and dump, of course. And others want to build and unify digital nations by using the tokens themselves. So this is a really important part of being a DAO. So also designing your tokens and understanding if at all and how you want to use tokens within a DAO for governance or other mechanisms. So here it's really important to go through this article and to read through thoroughly and understand what it actually means. So all right, this is a really long article, so I'm not going to go through all of it because of course we also have some kind of time limitations here, but the key aspects are really to understand that you should not just create tokens for the fun of it. When you are setting up a DAO, first there are some really important legal aspects that you have to keep in mind and that you have to evaluate. I mean, let's not underestimate the power of the SEC and how tokens might be seen as a security. And there are also other options to give out governance powers like voting at similar, using, for example, decentralized identities. Of course, what we should never forget is that most of these concepts based on Ethereum or the smart contracts chains, and so they are highly oriented towards tokens, addresses, and such, mainly for identity, which is pretty interesting. And I'm often argue that my IBAN, my bank account number, is not my identity. So why should it become an address? Should become my identity on the Web3? That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And this is probably because of the narrow possibilities. And yes, of course, I can demonstrate that I am a token, that I hold that address by signing a message with my private key. Makes totally sense, and it's really rooted deeply into blockchain concepts. On the other hand, I prefer to have my identity separated from my economic identity. So my bank account is separate from my identity, and same is, in my opinion, the way it should be also in within the Web3 ecosystem. And so they of course go really thoroughly the concepts and the experiences that they saw and they had. And I think this is a really good article to go through if you think and if your goal is to set up tokens, because of course there are many challenges besides regulation. There are challenges about how to transfer ownership, since you cannot take tokens away from someone, and voting rights, and the issues with voting with tokens, where whales, of course, have much more power, and this is where, for example, voting one vote, one person, one vote systems might have a more equalizing effect on the results. On the other hand, then you get into Sybil attacks, and since a lot of DAOs have also really strong anonymity within them, it's really hard to make sure that that person is exactly that person and not someone else. And so there is a really strong economical understanding that is needed when you set up a token, and I think this is a really good article to go through that. And then, of course, they already work towards this soul-bound token, which has been coined by Vitalik, of course. And have a look at this, because this is really, really deep and interesting article if you go towards setting up tokens for your DAO, of course. But in general, this is a really good piece to deepen your understanding of how things work. So, quick break. Any questions, anything you would like to add? Did someone really go through the article beforehand and would like to share some comments on it or something similar before I continue? All right, I take that as a no. So I was just taking a break between the after almost 30 minutes, 23 minutes, so that we can catch breath before we continue. So a little easier on the mind for those that already know what smart contracts are. So the idea of DAOs, of course, do not come from the crypto ecosystem by themselves. So it's not like they were born because of crypto, but on the other hand, these ideas, these concepts, they were, so let's say, some kind of niche before, but due to the opportunities that the crypto world and the crypto systems opened up, they could start to thrive and to grow and to express themselves really strong, in a really strong way. And it is has become a playing field, of course, for researchers also in the field of sociology, economy, and others, to try to figure out what and how people organize. And not only how they organize, but how they act and react in an economic system where they have the power. And this is really great, and all of this is possible thanks to what we call smart contracts. So smart contracts, of course, there's nothing smart in them, in the sense of that we call them, let's say, computer programs. So it's a series of instructions that are executed, just instead of running them on one single cloud computer, or running them on your mobile phone, smartphone, or whatever. They run in such a distributed way that they might always be accessible as long as the distributed ledger technology is available. They are immutable, so once you send these smart contracts to the network, you cannot change them anymore. And this is really important, because then people can write, let's say, this computer program together, these smart contracts together, deploy them, and everyone knows that as long as you use that piece of code, it is not possible to change it, and we can all trust it once it's there. Of course, it's still software, so there might be bugs, there might be some issues with that, But if there are, you write another one and you have to deploy another one on the network. So it's not that you can edit the code, and this gives you the kind of security that is needed in a decentralized system, that once it's there, nobody can modify it. Another important part of smart contracts is that they are deterministic, which means that let's say that it's a black box. If I input the number 5, I always get a banana. And this is important. This is really important because everyone, no matter if you're running it from my country, from your country at 5 o'clock in the morning, or during midday, always when you input the number 5, a banana comes out. And this is another really important property of smart contracts. And of course, this is what they run on the so-called decentralized world computer, which has been the vision of Ethereum back in the day, and I think it still is. And here is where, of course, we encounter all the big issues that Ethereum blockchain faced in the past, with the CryptoKitties game still is facing, depending on market conditions, where it took me, I think, $70 fees to register my my Ethereum name or something like that in fees. And of course, this is one thing that depends on market conditions. So we had this in Bitcoin when there was this kind of attack where they got the fees around $40 or even more. I don't remember now correctly the number. But of course, at that point, where we are right now and at the adoption of it, they're looking at Ethereum 2.0 scaling, different scaling solution, beacon chains. They are trying to figure out, okay, how do we make the system better? The scalability is right now is not there. The throughput is not there, and every node in the Ethereum network must compute every smart contract that is operating. This makes it really a challenge for developers. But of course, they're like they are working on other solutions. They're trying to figure out how to make it better and how to extend the possibilities to make it possible for developers to run their applications and smart contracts. What IOTA Smart Contracts does that is to scale horizontally. So it's not like we are building a quicker chain, but we give the developers the opportunity to build more chains at the same time. And with this opportunity, you can run your own set of validators, your own set of nodes, or with assembly find groups of validators that will run your contracts. And by doing this, we accelerate the possibility of and the number of smart contracts that can run on it. But of course, there is one big question, and then the question is, okay, if I have 2 smart contracts on 2 different chains, how do I make it possible that smart contract A sends information to smart contract B? Because I might have a smart contract that gets data from an oracle and measures temperature, and on the other hand, I have a smart contract that is doing some kind of insurance system, and I need to know if my crop field is getting too hot, and if it's getting too hot, I need to pay insurance. And to solve this, the opportunity that IOTA Smart Contracts gives is to anchor information on the Tangle, which itself is a parallel distributed ledger with 0 fees. And so you can transport this information from one chain to the other and make it act as a bridge. But not only information and state changes, but also they can move token on the main tangle. So you can create with the token foundry tokens on the layer 1, which is the tangle, and manipulate those through smart contracts and share information and tokens within smart contracts on different chains running independently. And this is an opportunity that I think might resonate with a lot of developers. And this is why we want to get Shimmer out of the door as quick as possible. Of course, trying to respect as much as possible our high quality standards to show how ISC and how smart contracts on IOTA will have an advantage over the actual blockchains. Of course, everything has to be validated, so it's not like I'm preaching gospel here. So we have to prove it, and we are absolutely aware of that, and this is why we're doing this, and we are trying and working to get Shimmer out of the door in such a state that it is possible for our developers in our ecosystem to grow and develop their dApps. All right, now that we know that smart contracts exist and that they enabled DAOs, let's just have a really quick view into beginner's guide to DAOs, because this is the one that I liked actually the most, and it's from last year, so it's pretty recent actually. And here, I mean, this is a really perfect explanation, which I also use, try to use really often, which is DAO is a group organized around a mission that coordinates through a shared set of rules enforced on a blockchain. So the idea here is really that, as I told yesterday, it is about a group of people, a group of entities, a group of individuals that have a mission. This is really important. Have a mission and coordinate through the rules enforced on blockchain. So the agreements are made on the blockchain. The voting has to be transparently done on the blockchain, and the smart contracts, so the rewards are distributed through the blockchain and smart contracts. So those things are what makes a DAO different. So here you see the structure between a DAO and a company. So here it's pretty loose, here it's really tight. The decision making, instead of being hierarchical, so it's not the top deciding, it's the bottom deciding. It's transparent, so you actually within DAO, every decision and every proposal should be transparent and on chain, and the voting and everything. Otherwise, it's not technically a DAO. And in a company, usually you just get information on what to do, but you do not understand the whole thought process, or it's not even, in a DAO, I might not understand technical decisions, I might not understand engineering decisions, but I can still have the opportunity to look into them, which in a company it is not really given. Then the participation, or let's say the possibility to contribute and to participate in a DAO, is open, so everyone might be able to join a DAO and to start contributing and to start to gain reputation and grow within a DAO. In a company, well, it's not that you get invited, but usually you get hired after some kind of processes. And the beautiful part of DAOs is that they are completely global. So it's not like because you're not in my time zone, we cannot work together, or because you not live in that city, you cannot work for this company. It is a really simple explanation and comparison between companies and DAOs. And here are some examples. As you can see, here are proposals. So it's shown how proposals have been done. if they have on-chain effects, different comments. So the idea is really within a DAO, it's not like being an employee where you just do what you're told, but your goal is to achieve the mission, to get there to the goal, and you do your proposals. And so you have to be proactive within a DAO. It's not like sitting there and waiting for someone to tell you what to do, but you proposing solutions, you proposing ideas, you proposing what to do with a really, I mean, you have to be a little bit entrepreneurial to be part of a DAO. Because if you want to be part of the governance, of course, because it's all about people working their asses off, and excuse my French, to achieve this goal. And so it's all about proposing stuff, proposing solutions, budgets, steps, action points, whatever, to achieve that goal. And then it goes up to voting. So within the DAO, people start to read, comment, figure out the best way of doing that, and then they vote on a proposal. And if it goes through, well, the proposal is followed and pushed through, which is a really, really unusual concept, if we might say, because it's seldom heard that people are really asked for their opinions when it goes about how to direct a company, unless they're a part of the management or some kind of friends of the bosses, for example. So here, this is one of our Louis here. Louis Freiberg is actually a previous IOTA Foundation member. So he was with us until I think around 2020, and then he was hired, all right, by a DAO with his highest salary. All right, so this was crazy times, of course, 2020. It was a good time to be in crypto. And this hits home because he was like my mentor and my superior, in the sense of that I refer to him with questions and blockers within the IOTA Foundation, and then he went to work for a DAO. And this is really particular. And this is, as he says it, wild times to live in. And so here there are different purposes for DAOs, for example, investments or grants. So the Moloch DAO is about advancing the Ethereum ecosystem. Meta Cartel Ventures is a for-profit fund that invests in dApps. The LAO is also one that invests in Boardroom and Avegotchi. All right, so here are different kinds of DAOs that do different things. So it's not like there is a one fits all, but everything can be managed by a DAO if you want to. So here is, for example, Flamingo Dao, which is a for-profit NFT focused DAO, and so on and so forth. So there is not, or better said, there are so many different ways you can organize people for DAO. It all depends on the mission that they want and would like to achieve, of course. So like I said, as example, there was this DAO that was set up to try to buy the constitution. There are service DAOs like the IOTA Content Creator DAO, which is, in my opinion, shifting strongly towards being a service DAO where they offer services to other ecosystem members, writing blog posts, designs, graphical designs. Now they have now a partnership, if I remember it correctly, with Einfach IOTA to translate articles to German, for example, and so on and so forth. And so there are different ways of doing DAO, and here, okay, they are talking about some toolings like Snapshot, which are really Ethereum specific, and so on and so forth. Of course, this is an article from last year, so there might be some older legal information about this. Today, if you look into the IOTA DAO Pioneers channel, we have Isaiah that shared a really interesting tweet by Chris Brummer about the legal wrappers for DAOs. So this is really interesting to see, because it's actual, it's fresh news about how to set up DAOs and what kind of legal wrapper to look for that. Another question might come: why would I need a legal wrapper? I mean, aren't we in a decentralized system? And the answer is yes, you are in a decentralized system and you can work within a decentralized system. But as soon as your DAO needs a website, you need a company, you need a entity in the real world. As soon as you want to hire or let's say to pay AWS to set up your website, well, you need a company. You need a registered company somewhere in the world. And this is where this legal wrapper comes into place. And I suggest everyone that is interested in launching a DAO to also keep in mind the legal frameworks and the challenges and opportunities that working within our economic system, of course, pose, because not everything is easy as it seems. Okay, we have 50 minutes, so I do not want to I mean, we already had a lot of overviews today, but we still have tomorrow, so it's not like I want to rush through it. The really important ideas right now that we will have to look at tomorrow, and then of course we have the recap on Friday. So on Friday 3 p.m. CEST European time, Rome, Berlin, we will have a recap of this first session with Fido. So what we should keep in mind is the different ways of doing DAOs, and I wanted to see this one. I think it's this one. Alright, Taoism. Of course, it becomes a little bit esoterical. So let's say that free thinkers like to think freely, and so they take their time to understand and think out of the box really strongly sometimes. So here, no, it was not this one. I will find it for tomorrow because it's really interesting to understand more concepts about DAOs and what they can do and how they can set up, because that is a really important part of it, and also to get some kind of examples of DAOs that have been launched and that have been successful or not, because I mean lots of DAOs have been experiments. I mean, there are some I mean, let's say that failures sometimes stay in your head longer. So there is this example of the DAO Dune book, which was somewhat comical. It was somewhat comical because it was during the hype, of course, of last year, and people just did not oh, come on, how many are there? Did not really think this one through, and this DAO bought the Dune Bible here and thought that after doing that they could just take pictures of the pages and sell them as NFTs. And the crazy part about it is, of course, that is not possible, because I mean they raised 11.8 million, all right, dollars to buy it, to purchase it. But the thing is, it does not mean that you own the rights. You're just buying a book and not any kind of legal rights about digital anything or analog anything. And this was pretty much curious because it was a huge fail, and it was, of course, it resonated a lot in the ecosystem, because it didn't really make any sense. It didn't make any sense because the mission was clear: buy the book and make photos of the pages and sell NFTs. But it was completely illegal. It is still completely illegal to do so. But they were able to raise almost $12 million. And so these are those cases where it hits home and you say, okay, a DAO should not be done just for anything or everything, but you have to understand your mission. It is important that the people behind it have or the people working within it have understanding of the implications of launching and managing an organization. And of course, you cannot have HR people and lawyers and everything within the DAO. So there are DAOs out there that offer that as services. Like, for example, the Lex DAO. Is it Lex DAO? They're just, yes, Lex DAOism, sure. Did they change it? Okay, these are the members. So these are lawyers, real life lawyers that work together in a DAO, in different, as you can see, in different jurisdictions, and have different practice areas, and you can hire the DAO to get legal counsel, and these are all professionals. So also here you see this is people taking their real life professions, packaging them in a DAO to make it possible for everyone to contribute, to make it possible to grow as a DAO and to offer more services in a fair manner, most probably, in such a way that the company structure is transparent to everyone. The decisions are taken in such a way that people that have something to say can say it, and they are not just subject to their partners or company owners. And I think that this is a really good example of how professionals leveraged the opportunity of setting up a DAO to optimize their own work and to become independent from corporate structures. And I think this is a really good example of how it is possible to do that. All right, short recap, and then we wrap it up. So we had a really short overview about ownership of organizations and how those structures are different one from another. We skimmed through a little bit through the analogy, all right, between DAOs, corporations, and nations, and the token design. So this is really something that I would look at by heart if I wanted to launch a token within my DAO. Really short overview of what smart contracts are, just to have an idea of what we mean when we say smart contracts, and really shortly went through the beginner's guide to DAOs. And now we went a little bit outside to talk about a funny story about what DAOs might also do wrong. All right, it was a really charged with information 50 minutes. So I hope that you might bring home some of these insights and some of these things. The first week is a little bit more about a broader, wider concepts and history of DAOs, and then the next week we will start to go a little bit deeper and maybe more pragmatical into DAOs. But it is important to have this introduction and to see what DAOs are about, and to have more of a grasp of this broad concept of DAOs, and what is actually meant by it, and how it is possible to leverage it. So if there are any questions, we have other 4 minutes, or any kind of contributions that you would like to bring, please unmute yourself and speak up freely. All right. If not, it was a real pleasure to having you with me today. Remember to vote for the Treasury, burn or build, and visit iotatreasury.org to understand more about the vote, and install the latest version, which I have seen has been released during our session today, so the 1.6.1 Firefly version, and use that to vote about the possible and opportunity that is opening up to the ecosystem around us. So thanks again. See you hopefully tomorrow at the same time, and then again on Friday at 3 p.m. CST. There will be invites, of course, and notifications for all our members here. Enjoy your time, and if there are any questions, of course, feel free to use the DAO Pioneers channel to exchange information, to share what you discover, to ask questions and get clarification about what we are discussing and learning here together. Have a great one, and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. Great class.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.